Without further ado, I'd really love to welcome the cast and crew. Let's welcome them this evening. I want to hear their hearts behind the film, so I've got the privilege of being able to ask you some questions tonight. I don't actually work for COVA. I was saying to Todd earlier, I'm actually a psychotherapist, so sat here with people with chairs in front of me and awkward silences, I'm very comfortable. I can outweight you in an awkward silence, so let's see how we go with that. But Todd, the first question is for you, because I've had the privilege of seeing the film already and knowing a bit about Bonhoeffer's life, and it's one of conviction and resistance and real deep faith. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about what was it about him as a person that compelled you to bring it to the big screen? And also I'd love to know if you relate to him in any way. Is there anything about who he is, who he was, his story that you personally relate to as you watched it play out on screen?
Well, I'll answer the second question first, and I think people will experience this when they watch the film. I think everyone is drawn to Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I think when you hear his story, he's like a magnet. And the reason I think that is because he represents the best version of how we would hope to live our lives in extremis. And I often think about the notion of who's going to jump on the grenade. This notion of the amount of heroes that exist in the world. And in our imagination, I mean, I remember when I was a boy, dreaming up scenarios in the yard. In our imagination, we always jump on the grenade. But when the grenade comes, will we? For Dietrich, it was life and death, every day, from the moment he opened his mouth at 27 to the end of his life at 39. He kept jumping on the grenade, one after the other after the other. But the reason that I think people are magneted to him is not because he jumped on the grenade, but because he wrestled with jumping on the grenade. That is the deep humanity of the man, the Garden of Gethsemane faith that I see in him. Not my will, but your will. Can this cup pass from me? Not my will, but your will. That's 100% why I wanted to tell this story and why it still resonates for me. Because every day we are asked to be brave in some way, and not even in life and death situations. Will we stay up later with our child to help them fight through their anxiety? Will we listen to our spouse during this argument instead of being right? Isn't it better to be loving than to be right? So these options to be brave are in front of us every day, and that's why this gentleman's life is a testimony and a reminder that it's available, that we can live this kind of life, to me, I believe, only by grace, but it's available to be brave.
Yes.
Bravery and that courage that you see in the film that's portrayed so beautifully in the film. And like I said, it doesn't come without a wrestle, does it? That wrestle to be courageous. Do you think that's really contagious? Because something of that kind, I feel like I caught that watching the film. Did you feel that you caught some of that courage that he carried?
I have a 30-year-old colleague who had been with me through the development of the script, so he'd watched it. Every movie takes 7 years, so he was there probably 23 years old when he was working at my company. And he admitted to me after he saw the movie that he'd been terrified. He was terrified he was going to go watch a movie about a man that would be so much better than him that it would make him feel bad about himself. And he said when he watched the movie, instead he felt, oh my goodness, he wrestled like I do. He doubts like I do. He tries to reach and attain, but he stumbles and he gets up again. And I think the movie will hit you where your humanity is. It will inspire you in the spots where you may be hard on yourself. Because remember, in the Bible, the devil is called the accuser. It's very specific. And the Holy Spirit is described as the advocate, which is a lawyer. So when the accuser is telling you that you're not good enough, you're not brave enough, you're not strong enough, remember there's an advocate who's going to step in and say, no, child, you are strong enough, you are ready, and I will take care of you, and I will give you the courage you need.
Yes.
What a powerful and poignant message, thank you. Patrick, I'm going to come on to you. You played Walter Bonhoeffer, the older brother, and there's this just very, I won't spoil it, but very beautiful opening scene which I found particularly emotive, looking at the wider narrative of the story. Was there a scene that you particularly connected with, maybe one that you were in, or one that's across the whole film, one that was particularly emotional or maybe even challenging for you?
That's a very difficult question, because I think there are so many emotional scenes in this film, and it's all inspiring and yeah, moving, and so all this film is a kind of a journey for every member of the audience. To me, and for my role, especially the scene, I don't want to spoil it, that we see later, is very close to me, because I think that everything what's taking place in this film is so up to date nowadays, and that's why I think this is the right film at the right time, because right now we need to think about those stories about a man taking a stand against what's wrong, against autocracies, against racism, fascism, and we live in times, especially for me as a German, I'm very scared about what's going on in Europe right now. So yeah, I think it's just very important to tell this film, or to tell this story right now. Yes.
Yes. Absolutely, the film is depicting something historic, but it does speak into a cultural moment now, doesn't it? And I think that's one of the things that makes it so poignant. So I very much enjoyed watching your performance, so thank you so much. Chloe, we're going to come on to you as the producer of the film. Bonhoeffer's legacy has been interpreted in many different ways, from theologian, activist, martyr, or all of the above. So when you're bringing this story to film, so we can all benefit from watching it, was there a particular vision or a perspective that you felt was really important to highlight? Was there one particular thing that you really wanted to be able to portray and get across?
I think every great piece of art is open to interpretation, and I think our wonderful writer, director, also producer, did an incredible job of highlighting the interpretation of a man who, didn't go with the crowd, went against his superiors, spoke up, spoke out for those with no voice, for those who felt scared to use their voice. And of course, yeah, there are interpretations that I think are baffling, to be honest. Do I think that Bonhoeffer is a, gun-wielding assassin? No, not really. Do I think that he's a man who really was of deep faith, of peace, and who really, really struggled to make really tough choices? I think that's what anyone who reads about Bonhoeffer, they should be able to get that interpretation, and not an interpretation that uses Bonhoeffer's life as a means for using, violence. I don't think that's the message that Bonhoeffer's life, nor this film, wanted to portray.
Absolutely, and that humanity that you've all spoken of, that wrestle, that humanity was just portrayed incredibly well, and therefore just so relatable. Okay, Clark, can I come to you? Hi, Clark. Where did the wolf whistle come from? Somewhere around here. My husband sat over there. I'm not convinced it wasn't him, but we'll talk about that on the way home. So in the film, you beautifully portray Reverend Powell Sr., who was inspired by the real-life pastor, Reverend Adam Clayton Powell of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. And Bonhoeffer was profoundly influenced by his time in America. I'd love to know, that there's just a scene, and again I don't want to spoil it, where you're sat around the table and you're head of the table and you begin to talk of the goodness of God, and at that moment my husband and I just had to pause. It just felt like this prayer, this benediction, this kind of beautiful off-the-screen moment that kind of jumped out into our lives, I think. It was beautiful, so we enjoyed that. But was there something that you particularly enjoyed throughout the film? And I'd love to know, as an actor, how did you approach the role and what did it mean to you?
That moment of sitting around the table is kind of like us sitting around here. There's something wonderful about God. there's something awesome about God. And it's not rhetoric like, hey, awesome. No, awesome, in the true sense of the word. I took this job because this was first titled God's Spy. And I thought, that's very interesting. Because there's, if you are a person of faith, you'll find that you're by yourself more often than with a lot of other people. Because you need to have that conversation with God. You can only do that, in silence. And as one who has been searching and who is on this quest, I felt that this was just the right piece for Clark's spirit. I think that Todd started this, I guess, 10 years ago, 5, however long ago? 6, 7 years ago. I think that it's amazing that this should come on out now, that something had the foresight to see the importance of this story being told now at this political point in political history. And the need to be inspired to stand up, and the need to speak out and not be afraid is something that we all need to be encouraged to do. And being part of that as an actor, I have to tell a story. But I'm also in this environment, in this medium, I've got to be careful, because I do believe with what you reap, you sow. So I want to sow good seeds. And as an actor and as a storyteller, that's what I want to do. And I'm very grateful that Todd said, yeah, come on, So I think for the first part of your question, sitting around that table, as you will see, it was a wonderful moment, and it was, all I could do was surrender to the text and let God do the rest. What was your other half of that question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. The second part of the question, and thank you for answering that so beautifully. The second part of the question was about how you approached the role and what it meant to you. I guess you've answered that in some way, but if you'd love to elaborate, we'd love to.
Oh, I think I answered that.
I'm going to jump in and do the second half of the question, because I want to talk about Clark. Obviously, everybody knows his body of work, and he's an extraordinary actor. But there's rare things that you see on a movie set. I've been on a lot of movie sets. And on the day that Clark arrived to shoot his first day, all the other actors, like puppies who finally saw Dad come home, followed him. They followed him in between takes. They followed him when he went to get a drink of water. It was just a man walking, followed by young actors who wanted to know what is the secret. Now, this is a rare quality in a man, to be so good at their craft that people want to be near it to get it to rub off on them, yet be so humble in their person that it actually does teach not just acting but life. So I just need to take a moment to say thank God for Clark Peters.
That's interesting. We do thank God for you. There's an interesting, isn't there, of just being an excellent actor and then tipping over into the world of an anointing where people would follow you around.
That's
so there's definitely something of God's hand. Maybe that's what I was trying to convey, was coming over in that scene that was just so incredibly powerful. So thank you for that. John, we'd love to come to you now as the production designer. How did your collaboration with Todd here shape the film's visual language, and were there specific themes or emotions that you aim to enhance through the production design?
That sounds very grand, and it should be. Sorry, yes, that sounds how it should be. But I was the last person to come into the film. Normally I get 10 or 12 weeks to prepare a film of this scale, but I got a call at 5 weeks and from John Matheson, the cinematographer, and he was in Belgium with Todd, and they said, listen, in 5 weeks we're shooting, and we haven't got any locations. I don't know why it was in that order, but it was. So, and actually, a job that another one that I thought I was doing didn't happen. So on the rebound, I thought, okay, I'm going for this. I had a Zoom call with Todd, I can't really remember what we said, but I realised, although he's very passionate, he was also relaxed and informal. So I thought, hey, yeah, I like to work that way. So I'll get on with it. And out I went, and for sure they had relocations.
Well, you pulled it off wonderfully.
So I think it was the Bonhoeffer house, the first thing we see. And I looked at this thing, what was the suggestion? And it looked awful. There was nothing remarkable about it. It did look German. It didn't have enough rooms that we needed. All that kind of. So I sent out the location guy again, and he came back with a few, after I briefed him, a few photographs. And one of them looked fantastic. We went there, and Todd was with me, and John Matheson. And we all saw it, and we just thought, this is it. And somehow that gave us the confidence, I think, for the rest of the film. That'd be true. That listen, we're going to get things right, and they'll be good.
That's wonderful, and isn't it good to have a snippet of behind the scenes, because you never know that. It really excellent. You wouldn't know any of the behind the scenes, didn't have a location, etc., etc. So
this is the rescuing work of God's hand on this movie. So we were, 7 weeks from shooting. I was being yelled at by a production, chop picket cinematographer, and I had not pulled the trigger. And I found someone in Belgium where we were shooting who had won Cannes twice, and he was very good, and he wanted to do the movie, and for some reason I couldn't pull the trigger. And I am the guy that you never hand the menu. I know what I want. I never waffle. In fact, if I want waffles, I'll order the waffles. But here I was not pulling the trigger on this DP. And it was Thursday night, late, and I'd been told that I had until Friday. And an email comes through the production office, and it's from John Matheson's agent. So John Matheson, our DP, you guys would know, legendary, multiple Oscar nominations, 6 Ridley Scott movies. He's a giant. Sadly, he's shooting in Bulgaria, or he'd be here. But John Matheson's agent sends a letter to production. Dear production, Mr. Matheson's film for the autumn has fallen through. He's interested in the time period of your movie. He has not read the script. Is there any chance that you would entertain the idea of him for this job? And I was just forwarded the email. I wasn't part of the email. So it was 10 o'clock at night. So I said, this is when I ordered the waffles. So I put my name at the top of the email chain as if it had been sent to me. And I said, dear agent, I'm terribly sorry. We cannot entertain the idea of Mr. Matheson for the job because we are offering Mr. Matheson the job. And can he be in Belgium in 2 days? Wow. And so I wake up in the morning getting yelled at by Chloe. And it's like, well, you can't offer him the job. He's too expensive. We can't afford it. It was like, I said, he's going to be here in Belgium. It's all going to work out. So not only does Matheson show up in Belgium, cut his rate by 2/3, but he brings me John Beard as part of the package. Wow. Thank you, Jesus.
Amazing. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe we could just push the film back a bit and keep on talking. But unfortunately, we can't do that. So I'd love to open it up to you guys to ask some of your questions. We've got one down here at the bottom. I think there's a mic coming around.
Yes, thank you so much. I've had the amazing privilege of having seen the film already. Thank you, Kova. But I want to say that I first saw the trailer for Bonhoeffer just after October 7th happened. I think we were watching Cabrini, and this Bonhoeffer thing comes out. I was like, this is the most prophetic thing ever. I can't believe this is coming out right now. And I guess I just want to ask anybody that wants to answer what this means for the UK church, especially in the light of the rising anti-Semitism that's happening right now.
Well, I'm happy to answer. You're British. I mean, you can answer for the UK church.
I'm Irish.
Oh, you're I didn't mean to complain.
John Beard can answer that.
I'm happy to answer. No, I'm happy to answer. I mean, the question is not just for the UK church. The question is for everybody, no matter what you believe. What do you do in the face of just blatant overrun in the destruction of the rule of law and it being done in the name of God? If you listen closely to all the rhetoric no matter what part of the world, if there is ever discussion of the word God, you will not hear the name Jesus. Nobody that is weaponizing religion to get their way politically is talking about Jesus, because there is no Christ in the far right Christian nationalism. That's why I call it religious nationalism. It is a religion, but it's not Christianity, because there's no Jesus in it. And if you want to talk about grace and loving your neighbor and fighting for the poor and actually following the words of Jesus, go read the Good Samaritan. Remember, the guy who wanted to get off the hook goes, well, who's my neighbor? I'll love my neighbor, but who's my neighbor? It's not the guy who lives above you. It's the guy in the ditch, the forgotten, the one that needs to interrupt your day. And you need to go and do everything, trade your schedule on behalf of their survival. And I think Bonhoeffer did that with his life, and we're called to do that. So that's the reminder for me. I'm not interested in a political debate. I'm interested in focusing on the one thing that works, and that's love. Love is the only undefeated weapon in the history of the world. People fight war after war after war. There's a line in this movie, everything that exists is built on the ruins of what came before it. There's no reason for us to traffic in war, even war of words, because it doesn't work. But love, nobody can stop love.
Yes.